Hi class, it's Mr. Butler. The purpose of this video is to talk about Chapter 6 and how to use the new annotation procedure for writing comments in the margins of texts. So you may have noticed with Chapter 5, Part 3, we rolled out a new annotation procedure, and that was a big success. This is really important. At first, I could not see the comments that you were making, and I didn't know why. But then I realized that after the due date passed, those comments reappeared. So I'm not exactly sure why that's happening, but the point is that if you made comments, I can see them now. So we do want to use the same annotation procedure to make comments in the margin so I can read them to see your thinking process. And thank you to all of you who did that. That was really great. Some of you had some questions about how to do that, so I'm going to cover that again in this video. And then we're going to read a little bit of Chapter 6. So let's go over here to the screen. The annotation procedure is the same as before. You're going to read the first 2 pages of Chapter 6 below. Like last time, I've just copied the text right here to make it easier for you to read it and to annotate. And this was a big question that people had. They said, okay, how many annotations do I have to make? The answer is 1 for each question. So here we have 4 questions. Question 1 is a little bit complicated. And then 2, 3, 4. So you just need 1 annotation for each question. You are going to need 2 annotations for question 1 because I'm having you compare something with a paragraph to chapter 1. So I do want you to annotate this, and I'm actually going to model an annotation for you right here so that you can see what I'm talking about. So you're going to read the first 2 pages. You're going to, for each question, select the sentence that relates to the question. That's your evidence for the question. And then you're going to click this plus icon over here that says add comment. All right. And then you're going to paraphrase that evidence and then explain the relationship that that evidence has to the question. And this is really important. You guys maybe didn't do this part, but make sure to click comment. That's what saves it there. Now, like I said before, I'm not going to be able to see these until after the due date, but the due date is tonight at midnight, so I'll be able to see them tomorrow, and that's when I would grade them anyway. Don't click resolve, because if you click resolve, it goes away like that. So let's do, and then you want to paraphrase what the evidence means and explain how it justifies your answer. And the reason why I'm having you do that is so that you can use your annotations when you go to answer the question. You can actually copy and paste those annotations and even add to them to make it easier to answer the questions. So let's look at number 1. Chapter 6 begins with a description of the same location described in the beginning of Chapter 1. The descriptions mirror each other, except the description in the beginning of Chapter 6 creates an eerie and threatening mood. So if you remember, at the beginning of Chapter 1, the book opens with a description of a place, and then Lenny comes barging in and he drinks the water. The same thing happens at the beginning of Chapter 6, so it's almost like this mirror image where the novel ends in the same place and in the same way it begins. Except if you look closely at the language used in both descriptions, you see that the description in Chapter 6 evokes a eerie and threatening mood, while the description in Chapter 1 is peaceful and calm. So that's kind of interesting that an author is able to manipulate language to describe the same thing in a mirror image, except it's almost like an evil twin. It's like a darker version of the initial description. So let's look at the first description. This is going to remind us of Chapter 1. A few miles south of Soledad, the Salinas River drops in close to the hillside bank and runs deep and green. The water is warm too, for it has slipped twinkling over the yellow sands in the sunlight before reaching the narrow pool. On one side of the river, the golden foothill slopes curved up to the strong and rocky Gabilan Mountains, but on the valley side the water is lined with trees, willows fresh and green, with every spring carrying in their lower leaf junctures the debris of the winter's flooding. Okay, so let's stop here. Let's look at some of the words. Fresh, spring, golden, strong, warm. So these words are calming and inviting. They create a happy and positive mood. Let's contrast that with the description at the beginning of Chapter 6, the end of the novel. The deep green pool of the Salinas River was still in late afternoon. Already the sun had left the valley to go climbing up the slopes of the Gabalan Mountains. Notice here the sun is personified, and it has left. So the difference here is like the sun is still there warming the pool. Now the sun is gone. And so that sort of represents kind of like Lenny is abandoned, which is definitely going to happen to him at the end of this. By the pool among the mottled sycamores, mottled is definitely not a positive connotative word. It kind of means that the sycamores are in decay. A pleasant shade has fallen. A water snake glided smoothly up the pool, twisting its periscope head from side to side, and it swam the length of the pool and came to the legs of a motionless heron that stood in the shallows. A silent head and beak lanced down and plucked it out by the head, and the beak swallowed the little snake while its tail waved frantically. Wow, that's intense. So I'm immediately going to annotate this by making a comment because I think it relates to number 1. This is dark. We have a snake, which is already kind of... snakes definitely represent negativity in literature. I mean, you have like John Milton's depiction of the Garden of Eden with the serpent, which represents Satan. But then you have a heron that plucks it out of the water and eats it, right? So first I'm going to paraphrase this. A heron is a bird, by the way, if you didn't get that from the beak, right? So a water bird plucks a snake out of the water and eats it alive. This is a very, I would say like kind of threatening image that creates an eerie mood. It's the same pool, and then remember, click comment so that it's there. I can see your evidence is highlighted, your comment is written, and you can use these two components to answer number 1. We already have evidence that shows that the mood is eerie and threatening in chapter 6 and an explanation of that. All you need to do now is go back up here. Maybe we can look at, how about the rabbits? Rabbits come out of the brush and sit on the sand in the evening. That's really, this is a really positive image, right? The animals here seem to be calm and not threatening in the description of the scene. So, and then we want to click comment to annotate that. I've got my 2 annotations for this question. We see the contrast in the mood of the same description. So, remember, you want to make sure you're annotating. I am going to grade you based on your annotations. I won't be able to see them at first, but then once it passes the due date, I will. And just remember, paraphrase and explain your annotations. And if you have any questions, you can just send me a message and let me know. All right, good luck. I hope you enjoy chapter 6. Some really strange things happen there in Lenny's imagination that I want you to pay attention to. And like I said, let me know if you have any questions.